Now, the government needs to do more to protect people from vCJD, the human form of mad cow disease. That's the view of an influential group of MPs who've been looking into the safety of Britain's blood supply. And it's a message which is supported by a mum from Southsea who lost her only son to the disease. Our East Hampshire and Isle of Wight reporter Dominic Blake has more on this and joins me now. So, Dominic, this report just coming out. Tell me more. What's it saying?
Well, Julian, it's from the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee. Whilst recognising that blood transfusions and indeed organ donations can be absolutely lifesavers, there is also a risk of being infected by someone who's given blood or tissue without knowing that they're carrying CJD, people who don't have any symptoms. So the committee wants to know how significant that risk is and what can be done about it, and it's asking the government for action in this report, which is published today. It wants a large-scale survey over the next year to show just how many people have been exposed to the infection. It wants an immediate audit, it says, of those thought to be at increased risk of variant CJD, and it wants the government to fund research into atypical dementia, and that's in light of concerns that perhaps cases of CJD are being misdiagnosed, particularly in the elderly. And the committee concluded its report with some criticism of the government, which said, "Our fear is that the government's current attitude is driven less by the available scientific evidence than it is by optimism, a hope that the storm has now passed and that variant CJD is no longer a threat to the public health that it once was. In the current economic climate, that attitude is not surprising. However, it is not justified. For all we know, the storm may well be going on."
Well, listening to that and joining us now is Christine Lord from Southsea, and we've heard Christine on the show before. Christine, good morning.
Hello, Julian.
And thank you for being there. You and I have spoken many times over the last, 15 years or so, and obviously telling the story of Andrew. And you're quoted extensively in the report which is published today. Did you feel that the Select Committee listened to you?
Yes, they did. It was very surprising in some ways how challenging this report is. Every member of the committee had actually read my book, Who Killed My Son, and that was apparent by the questions that they asked me, because as you know, Julian, and your listeners know, I've been investigating the BSE scandal since my 24-year-old son Andrew died in my arms of vCJD.
And the committee wants a large-scale study to find out how many people could be infected. Just tell me why that is important. Well,
it's important, obviously, because the more people are infected, the more people then can pass it on through blood, and that has happened. I mean, there are certain categories of vCJD infection. You can be a silent carrier, which can mean that you may never develop the disease, but you could definitely pass it on through blood. I mean, the Department of Health are very aware of quite a few silent carriers. There is one blood donor particularly that gave blood for 20 years, remained healthy, but is implicated in giving blood to at least 3 people that have since died of vCJD. So this is ever so important. I mean, we've had recent research from the Health Protection Agency that has found that at least 1 in 2,000 of us are definitely carrying vCJD. So, you know, there's tens of thousands of us here walking around, and many of those will be blood donors.
And and then on that note, the committee heard that the government didn't know how many people had been sent letters telling them they were at increased risk of variant CJD.
Yes, well, you know...
And they called for an immediate audit.
Well, of course. I mean, my website, www.justiceforandy, I get emails every day, letters and telephone calls from people saying, look, I've just got this letter, I had an operation, I've had a surgical procedure, and now they're saying that somebody that went into the theatre after me, used the equipment that I did, has now developed CJD, and I'm at risk of CJD. And as you said, they're not sure. The government doesn't know how many people are at risk. I mean, I actually had to take the Chief Medical Officer to task because she actually gave incorrect information to the inquiry, and I actually provided evidence of numbers of people that are currently with vCJD. When you've got the Chief Medical Officer who doesn't even know how many people have and are dying of it does raise many, many important and terrifying questions.
And finally, a concern that older people diagnosed with dementia could actually be suffering from CJD. What's your thought on that?
My thoughts is I've received many emails again, and I've also interviewed many families where they are convinced that their elderly loved one has died of vCJD. They've had visits from the CJD and Department of Health. It's Alzheimer's, no, it's CJD, and then there's this sort of possible CJD. And if you're possible CJD or another diagnosis, you slip through the net and you never appear on any government statistics. I mean, I've tried repeatedly, and families have, to go to see David Cameron. We've been refused several times to meet him. We've been refused many times by all his health ministers. I've got within a hairbreadth of Downing Street and then had it firmly shut in my face. You know, this is a terribly important issue, yet David Cameron and his government are closing their ears to this.
Christine, thank you for joining us on the show today, and as we've said, tragically losing Andrew to this, and campaigning on this since 2007. I misread my brain when I said 15 years. I meant since 2007 that we've been talking to Christine, but it's a story that I know will continue to get coverage, and it certainly will today with that new report that's just come out.